Hello, Baptist Tabernacle. Brother Shell here. It is Thursday of Holy Week, known as Maundy Thursday. And I have to tell you, to be honest, I'm a little blue today. This is one of my favorite services of the year that we have on Maundy Thursday. How we have the fellowship meal together down in the lower auditorium. And we share a meal together, family style, and then take communion together. It's just really meaningful to me. I think it's a really special time of fellowship and remembering the death of Christ. And we can't do that this year. So I'm just a little sad. But I want to share with you out of John's Gospel the events of that Last Supper. John's Gospel records a lot of Jesus' teaching during the Last Supper. The other Gospels, it's pretty short and sweet. But John goes into some detail about what Jesus taught that day. I want to read John 13, 1 through 17. Now before the feast of Passover, Jesus, knowing that his hour had come, that he would depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. During supper, the devil, having already put in the heart of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going back to God, took up from supper, took off his garments, put a towel around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet, and to wipe them with the towel which he had wrapped around his waist. When he came to Simon Peter, he said to him, Lord, do you wash my feet? And Jesus answered and said to him, You do not realize what I am doing now, but you will hereafter. Peter said to him, Never shall you wash my feet. And Jesus answered him, If I do not wash you, you have no part of me. Simon Peter then said to him, Lord, then wash not only my feet, but my hands and my head also. And Jesus said to him, He who has bathed need only wash his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not all of you. For he knew the one who was betraying him, and for this reason he said, Not all of you are clean. So when he had washed their feet, and taken his garments, and reclined at the table again, he said to them, Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, the Lord and the teacher, wash your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that what you should do as I have done. Truly, truly, I say to you, a slave is not greater than his master, nor is the one who is sent greater than the one that sends him. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. So Jesus here really stunned his disciples. Here he is, the master of ceremonies. He's their teacher. They're at this very kind of formal meal. The Passover was a very ritual and formalized meal. And then Jesus sort of brings everything to a halt, takes off his garments, wraps himself in a towel, and begins to wash their feet. And this is just, like I say, stunning and sort of a major faux pas. And Jesus then says, now I did this as an example for you, and I want you to follow this example. Now, some people take this very literally, and they have foot washing services. Mary Campbell, our recently departed member, her husband, Ray Campbell, was a member of a United Baptist Fellowship, and they practiced foot washing, and they only had communion once a year, and they would have a foot washing ceremony with that. They're sometimes called foot washing Baptist, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In fact, it probably is a good practice to help us put ourselves in the position of humbling ourselves. But I think what Jesus is really saying is he's giving us an example of humility, that to be great in the kingdom of God is to be the servant of all. And he says, I want you to do this. And in fact, he goes on to say that if you know these things, you'll be blessed if you do them. And then it's interesting at the beginning of this passage, before he starts talking about what happened at dinner, which starts in verse 2, during the supper. But in verse 1, John sort of gives us this big this introduction. It's really sort of a spoiler alert for the whole Passion story. He says, "Now before the feast of Passover, and Jesus, knowing that his hour had come, and that he would depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end." So right from the beginning of this passage, the disciples are clueless about what's going on. Jesus knows. He knows that this is the Last Supper. He knows that he's going to be arrested, tortured, and killed for the salvation of everyone. And he was willing, it says here, to love us to the very end. So today, this Maundy Thursday, I challenge you to find an opportunity to show servanthood, to show love to the very end. Find a way in which you can serve somebody today in keeping with what Jesus said. He said, "I set the example, and if you know these things, you'll do them too." So God bless you. Miss you especially this day, and look forward to speaking with you tomorrow.